no one is raised exactly like you. Can be from the same culture, but at the same time, you're still going to have a different dynamic and upbringing. Everyone is so unique in their own ways. And being able to understand and learn about your partner, that's when compassion comes. Hey, welcome to the Love Atlas. I'm your host, Sunana Sharma. We're all about finding real connections and making sense of the beautiful chaos of relationships. They can be amazing and at times very tricky. So let's chat, share stories, and learn and grow together. Today I have Alex. Alex and I actually used to work together at a law firm, and we reconnected, and I'm so excited about that. He has his own podcast, Guy Problems Official, and he's also a therapist who gives amazing advice to everyone. So Alex, introduce yourself. How did you get started on this journey?
Well, thank you for that sweet introduction. How did I get started on that journey? Wow, there's a lot behind that. So yeah, a million years ago, what seems like a million years ago, we worked together at that law firm.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was trying to get more into the music business, which I went full time into eventually and started working in the music business and was just really unfulfilled. I ended up working in a few other industries like finance and marketing and just really unfulfilled over the years. Did years of that and really just on this journey of self-discovery and trying to figure out what fills my cup and makes me feel good and it just always felt like at all these different jobs just very inauthentic. And I never liked the politics of the workplace, and I was always searching for something a little deeper. And even at some of the jobs where I was finding success, it was like, okay, but what is it just about money? Like, what are we doing here? What's the point of this?
Yeah.
And it just never really felt fulfilling. And at times I'm envious of people that could just go to work and put their time in and then go home and kind of separate it and their job doesn't need to be their mission.
Hmm.
But I'm not that person. I need to like what I do. I need to love what I do. I need to feel a sense of purpose in it. So for years, I've been a therapy client since I was maybe 16 years old. I've been in therapy, and it has really helped me become the person I am today. I've learned so much in my own therapy, and honestly, even in the most difficult times, it probably saved my life, honestly. So when looking at that, and then there were moments where I felt a little lost, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And there was always this whisper in the back of my head saying, maybe you should become a therapist. I always was kind of a listening ear for a lot of my friends, as many therapists are. And I felt like, you know what the last real push was one of my therapists at the time when I brought this up. He told me, I think you'd be a good therapist. I think you'd be a really good therapist. And that was kind of like, oh, like his stamp of approval meant a lot at the time. So
Yeah.
I didn't do it just because he said I'd be good. I actually thought on that for probably another 2, 3 years after that moment. And I sat with it and explored myself more and more about what I wanted and who I wanted to become. And as I was doing that, that whisper in the back of my mind got louder and louder and louder until I decided, I'm going for this. I think I'd really enjoy what this career has to offer. And it's the most fulfilled I've ever been in a career choice. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I love helping people. Um, I love what I love helping young men, but I love helping couples. I love helping people in general. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think there's a lot of the world is a hard place to live in at
Hmm.
times. And if I could help people discover where their happiness and fulfillment lies, then that's fulfilling for me.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. And as you mentioned, you had this voice in back of your mind, like, okay, go for therapy. And sometimes we end up ignoring these voices. We're like, oh, starting from scratch, and I've already kind of set in this career, and am I too old to switch over?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's great that you decided to listen to that voice. And it's incredible. Sometimes, we have these guardian angels where this therapist mentioned to you, hey, you would make a good therapist. And sometimes we just need that tiny little push,
Yep.
So
Couldn't agree more.
that was a very touching story. I think anyone who's listening, it's never too late to switch your gears at times, right? Like, when you have a position that's fulfilling, there's no better feeling than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell clients, that are older or thinking about or having a thought, I'm too old to make this change. It's like the time is going to pass anyway,
Yeah.
so you might as well do what you want. Because when I was, I don't know, 28, 29, having these thoughts of changing careers and becoming a therapist, it was like, okay, well, then it's going to take 2 years through school. I'm not going to be in my career until I'm like 31. And
Mhm.
then I told myself, I'm going to be 31, whether I'm in this career or a different career anyway. I might as well, before I know it, I'm going to be 31. And then when I'm 31, I'm going to tell myself, I wish when I was 29, I made this decision. So the
Absolutely.
time's going to pass anyway. So you might as well go for what you really want
Mm-hmm.
instead
Mm-hmm.
of looking back, wishing that you had later.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. So yeah, thanks for a wonderful intro, and I'm so happy that you chose to be a therapist because, now that we reconnected, now you can help everyone listening, especially when it comes to relationship, because that's what my niche is. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, I guess the big question is always, how do we handle disagreements in a relationship?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult question to answer in the sense of it depends.
Right.
So, disagreement in general, I would say if you're communicating with someone else, I like to say like everyone speaks a different language. Everyone has their own communication style, their own way of communicating. So it's not about bringing someone all the way over to your style of communicating, but it's about meeting them in the middle. So understanding, how can I communicate in a way that I will be heard instead of just forcing my point down someone's throat. It's, what am I trying to express to them? What's the message underneath? And how can I express this in a way that they will hear me? So if I can do that, I can get to the root of the disagreement, and hopefully they will hear what I am trying to express, and then hopefully they will meet me in the middle as well, and then we can be heard. I think a lot of times in disagreements, we expect the other person to communicate the way that we communicate, and that's just not the case. So when that happens, then it leads to frustrations, then it leads to, I might raise my voice, but volume doesn't really improve your argument or make your point any better. It just literally increases the volume. So
Yeah.
when someone increases the volume, though, then I'm going to get defensive because it feels like I'm being attacked. And then I might increase my volume. And then we're in this back and forth, and we're straying from the original point, which was to understand each other and connect and express myself and to hear how you want to express yourself. So oftentimes in disagreements, I feel like people veer from the original point, and they it's not about, I'd say in couples especially, it's not even about what you're arguing about, it's about how you argue that makes or breaks the couple. Because if we're arguing and we're just going on this road that leads nowhere and we're feeding more issues into the problem, then it strays from getting any resolution at all. So if we could have a disagreement but maintain respect for each other, slow each other down, because oftentimes we're so quick to react based on defensiveness or insecurity. If we could slow each other down and really try to hear what the other person is saying instead of being in our own head around like, oh, are they attacking me or are they pointing out this about me? Let me hear what they're really trying to communicate. So I'd say instead of trying to speak, listen
Mm-hmm.
and just slow down, and that allows you to really listen and hear what the other person is trying to express, even if they're not expressing it in the most effective way. Because if you could
Slowing,
slow
yeah.
yourself down, you could also help slow them down,
Mm-hmm.
and then we could meet each other and actually hear each other.
That's great advice. And that would also allow the situation to be de-escalated rather
Mm,
than, as you mentioned, raising voice. And once one person raises their voice, the other person is going to feel attacked and raise their voice as well. Because at the end of the day, we all want to be respected. And
mm,
that's what we are seeking. So at that moment, if someone is raising their voice, we're not, it's really hard to hear that person at that point because I'm trying to protect myself.
mm-hmm. And usually a tool that I like is when I'm in a conversation with someone and they raise their voice at me, I take that not so much as I did something wrong, but for whatever reason, I pressed a button that triggered them. Whether I intended to or not, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what my intention was. It matters that for whatever reason they became triggered. Okay, so when I look at that, the way I approach it, which helps de-escalate the situation, is okay, let's slow down. What did you hear me say? And if I ask that question, regardless of what I actually said, that doesn't matter. What matters is how they interpreted what I said.
Yeah.
So if they heard me say something that really hit that button for them, I could slow them down and be like, okay, I hear that that's what you heard.
Mhm.
This is what I actually meant. And then I could rephrase in a way that might not feel as threatening to them. And then we could have a more productive conversation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we all have quirks and insecurities. Um in your life, I'm sure everyone's insecure, everyone goes through it, and one insecurity goes away, then another one arises.
Yeah.
So was there one particular insecurity that you had to overcome, especially being in a relationship?
Yeah, I think I'm a people pleaser typically. That's my natural state based on how I was raised. I think I have to overcome wanting validation and wanting approval from other people. So that's something that's something I've had to overcome. And the way I've done that is by knowing my worth and knowing my value isn't tied to other people's reactions. So really just getting to know myself and knowing my value, how I define it versus how other people define it. So
Mm-hmm.
that took a lot of work, but I also don't I'm willing to disappoint someone else as long as I'm living in accordance with my values. And that's helped me overcome my people pleasing and my need for validation from everyone else. Um, so the way that would show up in my relationships was I would I might express my opinion, I might disagree with someone, but if they push on my boundary, I would give in.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates more problems for both of us because then I give in, it builds resentment because I betrayed my own principles in order to give in and make you happy. If I set a boundary and I've conditioned you that in the sense of I will always give in, and then all of a sudden I decide I'm going to be firm with my boundaries. Well, you're used to me giving in. So if I set a boundary now, your interpretation of that is, okay, well, I must not have pushed him hard enough. Let me escalate this so that he will give in
Mm-hmm.
because because every time I pushed him, he gave in before. So now I need to escalate even more so that I must not have pushed him hard enough.
Yeah.
So it creates a bigger problem now. And in overcoming that, from my point of view, the worst thing I could do at that point is to give in even when it becomes escalated. It's called an extinction burst in
Mm.
psychology, where it gets worse before it gets better.
Wow.
Because so when I am finally firm in my boundary,
Hmm.
the other person is going, like I said, escalate more because they feel like they must not have pushed me hard enough.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm still holding firm. Okay, well then they're going to double and triple down and push harder until they realize, okay, I've thrown a tantrum, I've yelled, I've screamed, and he's still not giving in. I guess he really is firm in this boundary. So
Right.
then they're going to conserve their energy. At that point, they're going to realize there's no point in kicking and screaming anymore. He really means business. He's really going to hold his boundary.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess there's a new dynamic that I have to adjust to. But
Hmm.
people aren't going to just adjust because you want them to. You
Yeah.
have to build the boundaries. And that took a lot of work for me. It is not comfortable for me. Even now, it's not comfortable for me, but I know to lean into the discomfort for the greater good of my own sense of self and the greater good of the relationship.
Yeah, and I agree with you because that's something I'm working on as well. I think it's so important first, as you mentioned, being a man of principle and knowing your values. At times we are not even true to ourselves. And
Mm,
when we're not true with ourselves and we're not, it starts with simple things such as, hey, I'm going to go do yoga today at 6:30 p.m. And then if I don't follow through with that, then, I don't feel good about it. And
yep,
that's when my self-worth, confidence level drops momentarily, especially, during that time frame. And then if I continue and I keep doing that, then my self-worth and confidence level, goes down even more in the long run. And when I show up in my relationship and if I don't follow through with certain things, again, then how, if I can't even trust myself, then how is my partner going to trust me then? So it
yep,
comes down to these small, small things that we have to work on within ourselves in order to show up better, because that's when the other person is also going to take us seriously.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also about giving yourself grace and knowing when to have self-compassion. So
Hmm.
if I don't go to yoga,
Yeah.
right, is it because I've betrayed myself or, maybe sometimes it just doesn't happen. But if I
Yeah.
make a pattern out of it,
Yeah.
that's when it becomes a lot more damaging to my sense of self. So
Hmm.
it's about striving for discipline, striving for the best version of yourself, but also having an understanding that I'm not
Yeah.
going to be perfect. And
Yeah.
when I'm not, I need to give myself compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. And being chill about it, where it's like, okay, you know what, today I missed it. It's not a big deal. I'll
Yeah,
go tomorrow. But then if it becomes
yeah,
a pattern, then, I got to
yeah,
figure it out.
yeah. I think the biggest problem I see people run into is, well, I didn't go today, so what's the point in going tomorrow? I've ruined my streak, so I'm back at square one. So what's the point of even trying? And
Yeah.
it's just not allowing yesterday to dictate today.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
the biggest thing.
Yeah. So now let's dive into how did you navigate a recent, let's say, big argument or fight with your wife, and what did you learn?
My wife, there we grew up different. We have different upbringings in terms of our relationship to our parents. So what we view as healthy communication, our ideas of that are different.
Hmm.
So there's times, I'll put it this way, my wife, she likes to, she's very fast. She likes to do things right now. If there's an argument, she wants to resolve it in the moment. Just like boom, boom, boom.
Me
She
too.
knows exactly what, yeah.
Yeah.
I find it's funny. I find a lot of I don't I find in terms of gender, I find that in my work, maybe it's just coincidence, but I see a lot more women are just quick to understand what they're feeling. And I think that comes from practice. Whereas men, we aren't taught to process our feelings as much when we're young. So we don't have as much practice. So
Yeah.
So my wife is like ready to go. She knows what she's feeling. She wants to talk about it and let's squash it. Me, I need a minute to understand what I'm feeling and what I want to say because I don't process it that quick.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, I wish I could, but that's just not how I was brought up. It's not my natural state. So I try my best to work with what I have. So the way I work around that is I try to be communicative around my process. So it's easier to get time for myself to process if I clue my wife into what's going on with me. So instead of just not responding or walking away from her, what is more effective is, hey, I want to have this conversation. I want to resolve this. I just need, 5, 10 minutes to process what this is like for me
Mm-hmm.
and know what I want to say. Can you give me 5 or 10 minutes and we can pick this back up? So again, slowing things down because I don't want to give a knee-jerk reaction because oftentimes I get kind of frazzled and I might just say something that I don't really mean.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to come off any which way, but sometimes if I'm forced into giving a response,
Yeah.
I could give you speed or I could give you quality, but
Yeah.
it's hard to give you both sometimes.
And the
So
fact that you know that about yourself and you pause and slow down and say, hey, I need that 5 to 10 minutes, that's incredible because at times it's really hard for me to also apply that. And then you just blabber certain things, and that's when not so good words come out of your mouth then. So you have to be very careful to push yourself, to remind yourself, hey, I need a moment. And
mm,
this is how I work. And it's great that you're thinking at such a fast pace, but that's not how I work.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the best thing to understand about your partner is knowing how they work and not trying to get them to adopt your style. So I'm not
Mhm.
trying to get my wife to slow herself down, although I would love that. I have to honor who she is and I have to
Yes.
honor the fact that she wants it to be resolved quickly. But
Mhm.
it's how can we meet in the middle?
Right.
So and it'd be best if she doesn't expect me to always speed up and give her an answer right now. We need to
Yeah.
try to honor both sides of it. Hey, I need a moment to process, but that moment doesn't need to take a day. Because
Yeah.
if I had my way, I would take a full day to
Oh,
like
no.
see myself and like really think of how I want to frame it.
Yeah.
It leaves her feeling abandoned and like
Yep.
she has to just deal with this issue now on her own and sit with all of her bad feelings and
Yeah.
just sit with it,
Yeah.
which isn't really fair to her at times.
Yeah,
So,
and it's so interesting because that's the reason why I'm the same way where I like resolving things pretty quickly. And the
mhm,
reason for that is because I don't want to feel crappy for
yeah,
X amount of time. I want to address it at that moment because I'm like, hey, if I don't, then I'm going to keep thinking about this and it's going to keep eating me up and like I'll be bothered by it. So it's
yeah,
like I understand both sides where it's so important. And again, in a relationship, you have to meet in the middle and you have to no one is raised exactly like you. You can be from the same culture, but at the same time, you're still going to have a different dynamic and upbringing. Everyone is so unique in their own ways. And being able to understand and learn about your partner, that's when compassion comes. As you mentioned, I don't want her to slow down for me. This is who
mhm.
she is, and you respect that and you admire that about her. But hey, I'm not exactly like you, so I have to figure out what works for me so I can show up better for you.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's not about which way is right, which way is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about connecting. It's about hearing and understanding each other. So I couldn't care less who's
Yeah.
right or wrong or who wins or who loses. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd rather connect than be right. And I think that's just
Absolutely.
no one because if you rather be right, then honestly, that's a situation where no one wins.
Right. Yeah.
Someone's gonna be wrong, and then they're gonna feel bad about that. So I think connection and understanding and honoring each other is really what the goal is.
Yeah. Do you think every relationship starts off with respect or respect comes within time?
It's hard to start a relationship from a place of a lack of respect for somebody. Because then when you are speaking from a place of authenticity and setting a boundary or standing up for yourself or just expressing a genuine opinion. If
Mm-hmm.
someone doesn't respect you, there's not going to be a lot of space for you in that relationship. And I don't know if that while respect can grow, I don't think that's setting a strong precedent for communication dynamics. I think starting from a place of respect allows you to build a foundation that
Mm-hmm.
can allow you to then meet each other where you are at. And but if I'm starting from a lack of respect, there's probably not a lot of willingness to meet you where you're at. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm probably a lot more likely to lean into my way of doing things because I don't really respect your way of doing things. So
Right.
I think it leads to more inequities in terms of the relationship.
What healthy coping mechanism did you develop together with your partner? And, sometimes past hurts come in between relationships, especially in the beginning. We all have baggage. So, how did you address all of this?
Yeah, I think the beginning is probably the hardest because you're still getting to understand what each other's triggers are and how to respond when those come up. So it can be difficult. I think the way we've navigated that is for me just calling a timeout when I think timeouts can be really effective.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
I think when I feel like things are getting heated or we're not getting to a place of understanding and we feel like we're kind of going around and around in a circle and it's just not productive at a certain point. It's like, okay, let's call a timeout. And so that kind of came in and then my wife realized so it's like constant optimization and like evolution of your coping mechanisms. So
Hmm.
the timeout for us came in, and then I would use the timeout and I would remove myself from the situation and we'd come back. But then my wife was like, "Oh, that timeout really didn't work for me because I didn't know when you were going to come back."
Oh,
And then
yep.
we realized, okay, the timeout is good, but we need to attach a certain amount of time to it. Okay, let's call a 20-minute timeout. And then we each kind of go and do our thing with the understand, because then she could rest easy for that 20 minutes, knowing like, oh, I could breathe. I know
Yeah.
we're going to come back and talk about this.
Yeah.
Whereas without knowing, she's just sitting in that anxiety, just wondering how long this is going to fester. So that's been a good tool for us. I mean, a good coping tool, I think physical touch, if appropriate, can be so effective.
Hmm.
If someone is escalated and you give them a hug, their nervous system, not everyone, it depends if trauma is involved. There's a lot of dynamics at play, but
Yeah.
if, if it's someone you're comfortable with and you're in a relationship with, and if you see them getting escalated and you give them a hug, a lot of times that's just going to calm their nervous system immediately, get them to kind of let their guard down and just relax and breathe.
Absolutely.
So that just, if you want to co-regulate, and I don't mean in a codependent way.
Hmm.
So my partner is not responsible for my emotions. But if
Hmm.
she sees that I'm triggered and escalated and she wants to help me and she realizes I'm having a hard time regulating myself, if she wants to co-regulate with me and she can come and give me a hug and that will instantly just release some tension for me and
Yeah.
allow me to take a breath, take a beat and return to the conversation a little more effectively.
Those are some really good tips. I would say physical touch is huge, and then also having a timeout because two people being escalated, you're never going to fix the situation. You'll just keep going at each other.
Yep.
Versus, okay, you know what? I need a 5 minute break. I'll be right back and go do your own thing. And when you come back, you're actually talking like human beings versus like animals,
Yes.
right? So it's
Yes.
very, very different. So it's great that those are some great tips, and I'm also applying those tips as well. And for everyone, it's so different at times. For some people, that 5 minute, 10 minute break might not work because both people might feel abandoned. So they have to figure out what works for them. Um,
Exactly.
Yeah, so it
Yeah,
can be interesting to figure it out, but I think through communication and really digging deep within yourself and also learning about your partner compassionately will definitely heal both of you to help you figure out exactly what you need.
yeah. I
Um,
think it's about constant exploration in terms
mhm.
of, as you said, basically figuring out what works for you, because there's not a one size fits all. And
Yeah.
it's about just exploring different things and seeing what feels good
Mhm.
to each of you, and then just being communicative around that. Hey, when we did
Right.
this, that seemed to really work for me. Like,
Yeah.
if we do more of that, that will help me relax in
Yeah.
these tense moments.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I was telling my partner the other day, I was reading this article about happy couples, like science-based happy couples, like what the tactics they apply when it comes to their relationship. And one of the things was during conflict, they use humor. And
Mhm.
I was like, "Hey, next time, we're angry, make me laugh." And he's like, "That's the
Yeah,
toughest thing to do
yeah,
because you pissed me off." But at the same time, small things like that, and not taking everything so personally at times
yes.
because we feel so attacked at times. But at the same time, knowing that, hey, at the end of the day, we love each other and we care about one another and we have this trust. So let's try to de-escalate a little bit quickly. And it takes
Yeah,
time and practice
for sure.
obviously. And in order to be happy, you have to learn about these things and keep applying them, as you mentioned, exploration. So, what does a happy relationship look like to you?
To me, it looks like a relationship where you and your partner could show up authentically as you are, and just be yourself. Where it's a true partnership, where I don't have to hide a part of myself, I don't have to suppress a part of myself. I could be emotional, I could have my weird quirks, but I could just show up as I am and
Mhm.
not be judged or shamed for it. And I could just show up authentically, and my partner can as well. And we go through this life together, and just enjoy each other's company, and just
Yeah,
connection. And I
yeah,
think it's hard to fully connect if we're holding something back or have a fear of vulnerability. I think you have to be willing to take risks in terms of emotional risk and be vulnerable with your partner.
hmm,
And some conversations are hard to have at times, but the alternative is not having them, and lacking connection.
hmm,
So
hmm,
I find that even though it can be scary at times, it's almost always worth it. I can't think of a time where it's not worth it. It can be scary, but if being vulnerable ruins the relationship, then that wasn't a relationship that I needed to be in anyway. If I
yeah,
can't be fully authentic,
hmm,
then what kind of relationship is that? So and other people might feel differently, but the relationships that I'm looking for are ones that are authentic, where we could each be ourselves and celebrate who we each other are
hmm.
without having to put on a mask.
Absolutely. And life is so much easier that way when you don't have to worry so much about and filter everything that you have to say. It's just exhausting and mentally draining. So being able
Yes.
to just, your relationship should be, it's not easy, but at the same time, you should just be able to flow together and not have to be scared of, oh, should I share this with him or should I share this with her? And feel uncomfortable all the time. And, so I agree with that. And I would say the last question, you've given so much advice, but one piece of advice to your younger self that you can share with everyone.
It goes back to what we just said. I would say drop the mask.
Yeah,
Drop the mask, because I spent years and years wearing different masks.
yeah,
And, it's funny. I was doing it all for validation and approval and acceptance. But the funny thing about that is, even the validation, approval, acceptance that I did get, it wasn't real anyway,
hmm,
because they liked this character I was playing, and they didn't really know the real me. So what is
yeah,
that even worth? And
yeah,
as you mentioned, it is exhausting wearing those different masks
Yeah.
and constantly being a chameleon and trying to, change my the perception of me to depending on who I'm around. And it's just it's exhausting, always wondering, trying to do what people wanted of me
Mhm,
instead of
mhm.
just doing what felt authentic. So it
Right.
is exhausting. It's not worth it. And yeah, if I could have stepped into my authenticity earlier, I probably would have saved myself a lot of heartache. But at the same time, that heartache was necessary to become the person I am today. And I'm a person that I like now. So it was
Yeah.
worth it. But I think my younger self would have been a happier person had I learned that lesson then.
That's such incredible advice. Thank you so much. I absolutely agree with you. Being able to really show up as you are, it's a beautiful thing. And that's when you can be authentic, not only with yourself, but also others around you, and you attract like-minded people then as well.
Yep.
And anytime you feel off when it comes to certain people, then you shift your gears and you go towards the people that love you and accept you for who you are, because that's what matters the most.
And I think when you step into your own authenticity, not only does your relationship with yourself improve, but the relationships with other people tend to flourish more as well. So I think authenticity is the goal for or it should be the goal for so many people because there's just such a light that can come across when you explore that for the first time. It's like finding a gold mine, and it's worth it. It's hard work and it's scary and vulnerable, but it's worth it.
I agree. Thank you so much for showing up.
Well,
It was
thank
such a good
you.
episode. Yeah.